Welcome to the Thrive Today podcast. I'm Natalie Born, the media host for Thrive Today and the founder of Innovation Meets Leadership. We are a platform for women who lead and believe. And what I'm so excited about is each time we release an episode, we're sitting down with a leader who looks at leadership and culture and how we can bring our faith into what we believe. And today is no different because we are sitting down with someone who inspires you all the time, our founder of Thrive Today and our founder of Victory Church in Norcross, Georgia, Colleen Rouse. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. How are you?
Good.
Awesome.
I'm so excited to have you. So today we are going to talk about a really important topic that I think is something we don't talk about enough. And it's almost sometimes when we say the word, people feel like it's a little bit, I don't want to say nebulous, but the word rest, like that word, sometimes it brings shame or guilt or fear because of the way our society runs, how people just kind of get behind us and push us constantly. And if they're not doing it, we're kind of pushing ourselves. But you had the opportunity to sit down with some extremely high-level leaders and talk to them about this topic. And so while, unfortunately, we couldn't be in the room with you, you're inviting us into this conversation that you had with these leaders.
Well, what was interesting to me was the Lord gave me for my opening statement. I am thankful, and I say this to you girls too, have this opportunity to share my heart with some high achievers. But my question is this: at what point do we move from being a high achiever to being an overachiever? I mean, is there some line of demarcation? And when we cross it, do we really know that we do so? Or do we just find ourselves, like you said, under the gun? And most of the time, what I have learned is it isn't the deadline. The main driver is us, something internally in us that causes us to keep going beyond what is necessary and what is healthy. And, overachievers usually don't end up winning.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I think if you go back to God's word and we look at kind of how he established the rhythm of work, you said something in your talk. You talked about the fact that, and I'll quote you here, it says, rest actually begins before the work. Talk to us more about what that means, because I feel like that's more of a Sabbath mentality. It's more of a restful place from which we work.
It is, and I love the idea of the Sabbath mentality, but I want to even take it one step further and go back to the night before your 9 to 5. And what's kind of shocking is that as a society, we spend more than $67 million on sleep aids. And so that makes me ask the question, why? Now, I am not a sleep expert, and I understand that there's all kinds of contributing factors. Some of them are physical. Some of them are hormonal, right?
Yes.
And the cortisol that wakes you up in the middle of the night. But largely, I find that what makes it difficult to sleep is we don't know how to slow the brain down.
Yeah.
We don't know how to rest our minds. And so we're taking a sleep aid to kind of force ourselves into this position of sleep.
We're knocking ourselves out.
Exactly. And I don't do well with those things. They just make me too groggy. So I think that if we can learn how to be restful at night and then carry that into the morning and through the day, because rest does not begin when you're done working, it precedes it. And so it's a Sabbath mentality. So when we think about the Sabbath, what's interesting about the Sabbath, if you've ever been to Jerusalem, there's something called the Shabbat elevator. Every single light, every single floor is pushed. So if you get on that elevator, you're going to stop at every single floor. And so the thought that they are still honoring and carrying into their society is do absolutely nothing. So I'm not suggesting that we think about absolutely nothing. I'm suggesting that we get ourselves into a place where our trust is so real, so genuine, and so deep that we don't feel the need to strive. And and the Sabbath mentality helps us to catch that point where we enter into striving in the way that we think.
Well, let's maybe zoom back a second for people who are not familiar with any of our language around Sabbath or Shabbat. We do a Shabbat dinner in our home weekly, and one of the first things my husband says to our daughters when we sit down at the dinner table is, if you had a great week, it's in the past. If you had a bad week, it's in the past. Right now, you're a child of God. You have nothing to prove, nothing to gain. It's time to rest. And so I think that we have to tell our brains it's time to stop. God created boundaries when he created the earth. And oftentimes in our own lives, we don't create those boundaries and we wonder why we have anxiety, we're anxious, we're fearful, we're always on edge. It's because we haven't created boundaries. And if even God created boundaries for himself, how much more do we need to create boundaries in our work?
Absolutely. And I think the crossover is that the sense of striving comes from this place of, like I said, a lack of trust and that feeling that I have to produce, I have to prove. And one of the things that the Lord had to teach me early on came in the form of a mantra. And he said, you have nothing to prove, you have everything to give. And I would say that the people that have the most difficulty with boundaries are the people that are highly responsible.
Yes.
Lazy people usually don't feel like, well, maybe I should do more. They're just quite content. So I'm not talking to that crew. I'm talking to those who are highly responsible.
Yeah.
So one of the first things that we have to learn when we talk about trust, and in a very practical way, is what is my responsibility and what is his responsibility. And we have that clear understanding. When he says, take my yoke upon you in Matthew 11, he's talking about this thing that would govern us, both in direct us and understand the distribution. What belongs to me? What belongs to him? Having clarity on that, and then working with him in a very meaningful way.
So I wonder, what are some signs if you're someone who's striving, if you're someone who's not able to turn it off? What if you're even listening to this and saying, I actually don't know if I'm high achieving or overachiever. Like that line is just very thin for me. What would be some ways that I could self-diagnose if I feel like I'm falling into one category or the other?
That's a great question. And I would say the presence or the absence of grace. Now, this is why I love the Message version of Matthew 11, because he talks about the rhythms of grace. And grace isn't what makes your job easier, but grace is what gives you ease. In other words, you look clearly at the difficulty in front of you, and you have a sense that I can conquer this because I am not doing it alone. So you're moving from this place of independence to interdependence, where you understand God is with me in this. And honestly, I think the huge thing for us to do is understanding, where is God already at work? We operate as believers with a different sense of criteria. So I have my to-do list, but guess what? That doesn't dictate to me what gets my attention. It's not the thing that is screaming the loudest necessarily. Sometimes you have to take care of the emergency. I get it. But it's the idea of who is directing my path. And if I understand that where's his anointing? Where's his grace? I remember one time I had 3 different messages I had to prepare for in 1 week. Now that's a lot boggling because they're all different. They're all different topics, all different audiences. And I was thinking, well, I got to take care of the first one first. But guess what? The Spirit of God started speaking to me about the last one. And so I literally sat down and said, okay, we're working on this one. And he just downloaded it for free, no striving. And so that one was done. And then I conquered the others. But identifying, where is his grace?
Yeah, that's good. Practically speaking as well, what I like to do at the beginning of the week is like lay out my week. And you've always seen these like illustrations that oftentimes speakers or pastors will do. Well, they'll put the jar on the table and then they'll fill it with the big rocks first. And I think so often we fill our week with the sand and the little rocks, and then we're like, why won't these big rocks fit in? And so if we'll take another mentality to start our week in prayer and just say, okay, God, I have these big rocks, let's lay them out, and let me plan my calendar accordingly, and then we'll let the little rocks and sand fill in where they may. Oftentimes we flip that, and then we're surprised when we are striving because we've left the big rocks for last, and now we can't get it done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that I had to learn, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. And I don't know, for whatever reason, that was my leaning. And I remember that creates a sense of anxiety, that creates a sense of never enough.
Yeah.
And perfectionism, that's what that is. You can't achieve perfectionism.
Yes.
It's unattainable. And you can, in exchange, operate from a spirit of excellence, which is completely different. And I had to get this understanding again from the Lord. He said, I don't want you to give me your all. I want you to give me your best. What's the difference? Well, you can't give your best if you're exhausted.
Yeah.
So it's not about just, he wants to extract everything from us because after all, we aren't tools.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to use us. He does want to make us useful. There's a difference. And so he will, help you to expedite appropriately so that you are operating at your highest.
Yeah.
And what he showed me, which actually a shock, he said, you know what, Colleen, you know what's underneath your spirit of perfectionism? It's a lack of contentment. And now I didn't see that. I didn't even want to see that, but I didn't want to believe it. But when he showed it to me, all of a sudden, and don't you love how God shows you things and you see it, the light comes on and it's kind of like, oh, wow, that's truth. You know when you receive truth.
Yeah.
And then it's up to us to accept it or not. And so in that moment, I said, okay, I understand that. And then he brought me to Genesis, where, 7 days he works. And at the end, he rests. But what he does before that is what enabled him to rest. And guess what that was? He celebrated it. And so my lack of contentment was tripping me up in my ability to discover the good in things, because I'm always looking, how do I improve this? And I was stuck on this treadmill of that thought.
Yes.
Now, what kind of leader does that make you? It's somebody that can't be pleased. And so when I realized the trickle-down effect and how it's affecting my team as well, it helped me to change my mind. I'm going to celebrate the good.
Yeah.
I'm going to see the good and celebrate the good. And in that, you find yourself being grateful. And here's what being grateful does. You begin to see, guess what? I'm not responsible for this anyway. It all goes to him.
It's so good that you're saying that, because if anyone is listening to this right now and thinking, oh my goodness, she's describing me perfectly, like this is me. One of the things I want to also tell you is that sometimes perfectionism can be a trauma response.
Yes.
Whenever we have experienced trauma, maybe even early in our lives, oftentimes what happens is we kind of create this saboteur, if you will, that now protects us, right? So the saboteur of control is like, okay, I'm going to come and control things whenever things feel out of sorts or discombobulated, or, oh, they don't think I'm good enough. I'm going to show you how we can win this, right? And it goes to a point where you're no longer operating in God's grace and you're outside of his will. And so often I find when talking to leaders who deal with perfectionism, you can almost trace it back to childhood and some kind of trauma response that happened. I was just talking to a woman a little while ago, and she was like, whenever someone comes over to my house, they have to do this, this, and that. And I just asked her, I said, when's the last time you felt out of control? And you use your home as a place to regain control. And she's like, oh my gosh, when I was little and this was happening in my house, I would go organize everything. I'm like, so now you don't need that trauma response anymore. You're not in danger, but you're still transferring that over to your adulthood and still operating through that lens. And so often we don't realize that we take things from childhood and transfer it into our work, the way we live, the way we show up. And then we're surprised when people are frustrated with like, like, you're so controlling. It's a trauma response. And so even if you're hearing this today, we would encourage you to kind of step back and self-assess as you're listening to this. Like, do you find that you struggle with perfectionism because there might be a lot more under the surface than you even realize? And I know that as you were talking to these leaders, they were probably getting hit right between the eyes with how much of me is relying on God and how much of me is relying on my own skills, talents, and energy that I've used to build the XYZ thing, and now I can't figure out how to turn it off. And that's, again, that goes into our not being able to sleep, because if it's on us to take care of ourselves, then we even take that into our evenings, our nights. Our brain feels like it's in flight or flight, and it's constantly having to fix things even in our sleep, which is why we're not sleeping well.
And it doesn't relent. And so, what's interesting, so this group that I was speaking in front of, deans of university, a lot of high level leaders.
Yeah.
And after the session, I had so many of them come up to me and say, I just took 3 pages of notes. Can I have your notes? So what it reveals to me is so many of us are struggling in secret with
Yes.
this. And, regardless if it's a trauma response, if it's something that was set in you from childhood,
Learned. Yeah.
I was raised by 2 teachers so therefore everything had to be perfect for my grades.
Right.
And it becomes ingrained in you, but it doesn't need to stay.
Yeah.
So what does the Bible say? How do you get rid of bad habits?
Yeah.
You adopt a new discipline. You overcome evil by doing good. What does that mean? That means that what is the bread? What is the word that you need? As people grab a hold of mantras, and mantras, they're cute, they're fine, but they're not going to get the job done. What you need is the word of God, something that can be quickened in your spirit, because everything that is transformational in us happens in our spirit. We can't just think something, it has to be ingrained in our spirit. So you find scriptures. Galatians 2:22, it's no longer I that lives, it's Christ Jesus that lives in me. The life that I now live in this flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. That was what I needed to help me stop striving to this thing for approval. That I understood that I was carrying the Spirit of Christ in me, and I didn't need to live for myself or anybody else anymore. I was living for him. And as I'm meditating on that, and I'm, 30 years now, it's still life. It's still bread to me. It's still life for me. And it helps me from going back into old patterns.
Yeah.
And, at night, I wake up, even last night, I woke up and I was thinking of things. I was thinking about this podcast. I was doing all that. I was falling back into those same things. And so what I do is I go to the word. In fact, what works for me is to go to a worship song.
Yeah.
And I start thinking about the lyrics to a very simple worship song. I don't need to sing it. I just think about it. And there's something about a song. This is why marketers use jingles in the early days, because it just gets ingrained in you. You find yourself, you got to go out and buy the product. Yeah. So just thinking about a simple song and putting my brain, overcoming evil by doing good. I put my brain on something else. Your brain at night is just being your brain. It's just doing what it's been created to do, because all the unresolved things come bubbling to the surface. Yeah. And so you just retrain your brain to think on that which is good and lovely and of a good report. And pretty soon you're back to sleep.
Yes. Something that I've had to do to help myself sleep sometimes is I'm a huge journaler. So I'm constantly journaling. And one of the things that I've done is at night, I'll kind of, especially if it's been a tough day or a lot going on, is I'll journal that out, and I'm giving my brain a chance to know that this information is now released to God. You don't have to remind me about it all night. Thank you for that. You can go to bed and rest, brain. You don't have to stay up trying to figure out what to do. God's got it. And that has been huge for me, and just being able to release that information and be able to then go to sleep, because I do sometimes struggle with either getting to sleep or just waking up at like 2 a.m. and the brain's like, okay, let's go. I'm like, no, it's not time.
That's the kicker right there. Yes.
So just being able to have that journal, and Something I'll even say is, okay, I've written it down. That means God's got it. You can go back to sleep. And it's just telling yourself, you're done. Go back to sleep. It's time to rest. And so I love how you talk about the unforced rhythms of grace, because God is not putting a heavy yoke on us, but oftentimes we are willing to carry that heavy yoke because we think it's the only way.
Yes. And, it's the way we have been socialized to perform, and that need to perform, that striving for approval, and deadlines dictating. We've been called to live above this. And it is our choice. And to understand that, where is God already at work? Like I said earlier, where's his grace?
Yeah.
Where is he already at work? That's where I want to go and join him. And I understand that, I hear a lot of times, especially entrepreneurs say this, and I understand they mean it good. It's, Jesus is my CEO, but that's not exactly accurate, because he doesn't work for you.
That's right.
We work for him,
Yeah.
and he works with us.
Yeah.
And so the difference between, are you the owner or are you the steward? And now, an owner of a business, they are free to make all the decisions they want.
Yes.
Right? They answer to no one but themselves. But they also carry the weight of every responsibility. The buck stops here, and it's heavy.
Yes.
A steward does not have the same liberty to make the decisions that they want to make. They have to go to the boss. They have to go to the man in charge, who, as people say, the man upstairs, and to ask for direction. Not every little thing, but but it's this idea of operating in submission, because that's what is a reflection of trust. When I understand the difference between independent and being interdependent. So I'm just checking with him. I'm allowing, we talk about having margin, and it's not just creating empty space on your calendar or between your one appointment to the next. It's that Sabbath mentality where I'm just checking in, where I'm just stopping from my work and just checking to see, am I on the right path?
Yeah.
And so this is what a steward does. And a steward has to check in and get approval. However, they don't carry the weight. And so we have this choice every single day. Am I trying to be in control? Am I the owner, or am I the steward? Am I fully trusting?
Yeah. Wow, that's so good. And I think about how often we don't operate that way, and we can probably think back about the last 5 to 10 decisions we made where we didn't ask God and how those turned out. And so there's a rhythm to this of putting that faith out there that God is going to show you what the truth is. And if he's not showing you to move, then you need to wait. There's a wisdom in that as well. I think that anytime money exchanges hands, we need to be prayerful about whether or not I should be partnering with this person, this company, this thing. And I think God will give us the wisdom in that if we will wait and not try to own everything, but steward what he's already given us. Well, I'd love to know, when it comes to rest, what final thoughts you'd have for our listeners today.
Well, I think, what if we just boil it down to this, is that what does it take? How do I achieve moving from pressure-driven work to purpose-driven work? And it all points back to this simple understanding that, the greatest acknowledgement, the greatest title that we will ever have is a son and daughter of God.
Yeah.
And understanding how the expectation of what the Father wants of us. And I think about in John 15, when Jesus was speaking to his disciples, and he says, "No longer do I call you servants, but I call you friends, because I've revealed to you everything that the Father has told me." And he says, a servant doesn't understand the heart of the master. He doesn't understand the why. And so what changes is if we embrace this idea of sonship, of being a daughter, of being a friend of God, then we know that if you're my friend, and you are, I'm not going to be unclear about the expectations you have of me.
Right.
It all is a bunch of heart work. And coming into this understanding that I'm a daughter, I'm a friend of God. And so therefore I won't be tempted to get into this hamster wheel and just keep running and running and running for approval because I already have it. I have his friendship. So what if you went to work with this understanding that I'm a daughter and I'm a friend? And how is that going to change your 9 to 5?
Wow. Well, that is so powerful. And I just know that this is going to change and transform the way you personally think about your work, how you live and how you lead. And not only that, but it has the impact to change those that you are leading around you. Because once you get this identity and this understanding of who you are, you now can translate that into those that you work with and those that you lead. So thank you so much for your time today. This was so fun. We are just a few episodes away from our 100th episode. So
Yes.
we want to invite you to join us for that episode as well. And ladies, look, head over to thrivetoday.com. This is where you can learn more about our community. You can get in community with us. There is coaching, there is resources, and a ton of opportunities to learn from incredible leaders who are leading the way in the space, who are thinking about more than just what the world might tell you, right? But how do you apply what's going on in your life and in your leadership to God's word, right? We're a platform for women who lead and believe. So we're here for you, and we're so excited to see you. Head over to thrivetoday.com to learn more about us. And you can follow us on Instagram at Thrive Today Women. Well, we'll see you next time. Don't forget to thrive.